This is the Cliff Yates Show. Personal growth, motivation, inspiration, and philosophies for a great life.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Cliff Yates Show. You are in the right place. We together are going to have a positive impact on other people. And I won't say this is a political episode, but I guess it would have to be considered the title of the episode and what we're discussing today, and that's the left or the Democratic Party abandoning personal health, driving RFK Jr. to Donald J. Trump's campaign and being a part of his administration. Now, I think there was a lot more that kind of goes into it. My belief is that the Democratic Party knew months ago, probably November-ish, maybe beforehand, that Joe Biden wasn't going to be the candidate. And they could have had a primary where people had debates, discussions, and they could have let the people vote for who they wanted to be the candidate in place of Joe Biden for November. But they didn't do that. They waited. They waited until they could really install Kamala Harris as the candidate in place of Joe Biden. And nobody really voted for her. So when the left accuses Donald J. Trump of destroying democracy, how hypocritical it is that they actually are destroying democracy by installing a candidate who was never voted by the people to be that candidate. And so now we have RFK, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., joining the Trump team. This was such a big deal. RFK was a lifelong Democrat. However, we are seeing over the past few years that the Democratic Party isn't what it was or how it used to be in the time of his father, Bobby Kennedy, or his uncle, John F. Kennedy. Today, John F. Kennedy would be seen as probably a right-wing conservative. And so the Democratic Party has changed. If you're as old as I am, you remember back in the 70s, late 60s, the Democratic Party seemed to stand for freedom of speech, anti-war, and just freedom to do what you want inside the law. And now we've seen a complete switcheroo where the Democratic Party is no longer allowing free speech. These campuses won't even allow certain conservatives to speak on their campuses. These people are part of the military-industrial complex. They're pro-war. The things that they accuse Trump of going to do, starting wars, World War III. He's already been president for 4 years. He caused no other wars, and we could go deep into that. But today we're talking about RFK coming to Donald Trump, and we see that a big part of that was, even though he's a big environmentalist, and he sued these big corporations, and we see that a big part of his motivation is what party going forward is going to be about making food safe, about getting back to making America healthy again. Maha! You know, I thought about having that as my logo for months ago, and now RFK Jr. comes out with Maha, make America healthy again. We have 70%, 60, 70% of Americans are either overweight and or obese. Come on, ridiculous. And we're going to go deep into those subjects in later episodes as we take on the fight for American health and make us healthy and strong again, healthy and fit. And if I can feel this energetic, this enthusiastic, this fit, this in shape at age 67, you can too. And so let's join forces. And RFK is joining Trump because he reached out to the Democratic Party and the Harris campaign also to see if they would be open to taking up the torch for health, and they wouldn't do it. They wouldn't take his calls. You got to think about RFK. He couldn't even, back in the day, RFK switched to being an independent when he was, the Democratic Party turned away from him and refused to accept him as a nominee for the next presidential election. And back when Ross Perot was running as an independent, the major news outlets granted Ross Perot hundreds of interviews and gave him an open door to express his policy theories and what he wanted to do if he was elected president. And the mainstream media turned away from RFK, would not allow him to speak. I think he was only allowed like 3 interviews. So he had to actually go to conservative news outlets. He had to go to independent podcasts and independent news sources to get his message out. And he was still, I think he was still bringing in 5, 10, 15%. So for that independent vote, whatever it's going to convert to 5, 10, if it's just 3 to 5%, who will now switch following RFK's lead into voting for Trump, that's going to be a big deal, a very big deal. When RFK made his announcement that he would be suspending his campaign and throwing in with Donald Trump, this was a big deal. If you can imagine, his wife, who plays Larry David's wife in the TV series Curb Your Enthusiasm. The amount his wife's Democratic left-wing, their associates, can you imagine the pressure that he took on in throwing in with Trump, what he had to do and come forward with courage to do this? The backlash is unbelievable. Even after the day after he did this, you had the family of the Kennedys putting out that, RFK has turned his back on the family and the Democratic Party. He has betrayed us. And so RFK, with great damage to his own family dynamics and relationships, came forward to do what was right and to fight for what is right and to stand up for. And one of the big things was personal health and what these big pharma companies are doing as they're being funded. Big pharma is being funded. If you can imagine that 75% of the FDA's FDA budget is provided by big pharma, it's just unbelievable how unsafe the foods are. And I'm finding out, reading a book by Callie Maines and his sister, who is a surgeon, who quit being a surgeon just because she saw the sick care that was going on in this country and what the government was doing, that they were bought off by these companies. And to find out that these cigarette companies, when the Surgeon General came out in the 70s saying that cigarette smoking was deadly to your health, these same companies went out and bought food companies, and now to get us hooked on sugar. And it's just a catastrophe. And so we're all about that here. We're all about personal development. We're all about inspiration and motivation and wealth and health. And the first thing to do with wealth is your health. So without your health, you're going to have nothing. So it was a big deal for RFK to join Donald J. Trump on stage. Can you imagine him now doing what he did and the backlash he took probably from family, friends, the Democrat Party and the Independent Party, doing what he, and then to appear on stage in Arizona with Donald J. Trump in that big arena, thousands and thousands of people, and probably didn't know what to expect. Probably felt a little uncomfortable, I'm assuming, coming out on stage and joining the campaign. But yet when he came out and was introduced by Donald Trump, the audience, and I believe in support of and in sympathy to RFK Jr., because of the assassination of his uncle and his father, who were on the campaign trail when they were assassinated. Out of respect for them, Donald J. Trump's audience gave him a standing ovation. It's an amazing sight to see. And that was just out of respect, I believe, for RFK's loss of his uncle and his father, because now RFK has been on the campaign trail, and his father and uncle were assassinated on the campaign trail, and yet he was either totally denied, or at least in big part denied, Secret Service protection. You would think that any party, out of respect for what happened, would put politics aside and say, listen, your father and uncle were assassinated on the campaign trail. You're campaigning. One thing we will make sure that does not happen, cannot happen, is that you could be assassinated on the campaign trail. And so as America, as a country, we're going to make damn sure that we protect you and your current campaign, just because it's the right thing to do. And I think before RFK Jr. decided to do this, when the assassination attempt happened to Donald Trump, I think that kind of created a little bit of a kinship there between them. There's respect on both ends. And of course, Trump has come out and said that he will unveil or release all of the records from the JFK assassination. And so that's one thing, of course, that RFK Jr. wants. And I was inspired, motivated by something I read, and I was reading about this very topic that I put out for the title of this podcast, was from the Federalist. And this is an article by Tristan Justice. The left's abandonment of personal health drove RFK Jr. from the Democratic Party, along with some other things we can see that motivated him to come to Donald Trump's. And you know what? After the assassination attempt on Donald Trump, RFK Jr. said, somebody from Trump's campaign reached out to him, or then he reached out to Trump's campaign, and they found out, and I think this is pretty amazing. This is something that we need to do as American citizens. We need to do this. RFK is still a Democrat. He's a Democrat. He has many, many positions that Trump does not agree with, and there are many positions that Trump has that RFK does not agree with. And they're not abandoning their beliefs, principles, and values, but they're saying we have a lot more in common. And so we're going to go forward maintaining our values and principles and what we believe in. We're not going to compromise those things, but we can join forces based on the things that we do agree on. And I think that's what the country used to be about, was coming together for the main values and principles that America held. And then we would argue over the smaller issues, or the issues that we would disagree on, and how certain things would be run. There wasn't such a schism in values and principles that there are today between the two parties, whether we can even say that the Democratic Party is a legitimate political party and it has not been hijacked by the extremists in the left, and extremists who would believe in Marxism and communism and socialism. So we won't go there today, although I alluded to it. But we need, as a country, to be able to do these things. Hey, listen, let's discuss these things because we agree on more than we disagree on it. But that's not what's going on in the country today. You follow Trump, therefore you are with that person, therefore you are, and you believe, and I will not discuss this with you. And that hurts the country altogether. And so we need to take this example from RFK Jr. He's not giving up his principles and values. Donald J. Trump is not giving up his. They're going on their beliefs, but they know there's a lot they have in common. And look at these other folks, like Elon Musk is going forward and saying, listen, Elon Musk, his company, Tesla, is subsidized in great amount of financial support from the government. And so believe me, I think if Elon Musk thought that the Democratic Party was going to win, maybe he wouldn't be going all in with Donald Trump and also all in on freedom of speech. But I think he would be, because I think he's standing on principle. And he says, I don't give a shit about the fallout. I'm standing up for what is right. And so you have all these unlikely allies coming together for the common good is what they're doing. Let's get back to this article from the Federalist by Tristan Justice here. And it's a great article. As I said before, the left's abandonment of personal health drove RFK Jr. from the Democratic Party. And I think it's just amazing, some of the things that he notes in here, which no major presidential candidate ever seemed genuinely concerned about health care in any meaningful manner until Marianne Williamson in 2019, when the self-help author went viral on the Democrats' debate stage for highlighting the epidemic of chronic disease. However, RFK's uncle, John F. Kennedy, in the 1960s. And I'll see if I can find the video clip where he said, one of the most terrible things that we can let happen is to let our children get fat, out of shape. We need to keep them fit. We need a physical fitness program. I think JFK is the one who started the Presidential Fitness Award back in the 1960s. And I don't know when they got rid of that, but they should have kept it. It's so true. We don't have a healthcare system in the United States. We have a sick care system in the U.S. Williamson said, we just wait until somebody gets sick and then we talk about who's going to pay for the treatment and how they're going to be treated. What we need to talk about is why so many Americans have unnecessary chronic illnesses, so many more compared to other countries, because it's the business model. All doctors are trying to do good. They are there to treat acute injury and illnesses, and they've been trained in how to do that. They've been trained by these schools of medicine that are subsidized by Big Pharma. Big Pharma is giving money to these trainings of the doctors who in most cases have no classes in nutrition. The business model is pills and procedures to fix the symptoms and not the underlying cause. And I'm reading a book about good energy right now from Callie Means, and it really goes into the fact that we have all these specialist doctors, right, who specialize in one part of the body. This finger, that's my specialty, when actually, if we fix just one part of our metabolic health, it will really fix a myriad of illnesses, chronic diseases. Each one is related to the other, but yet we niche down in our sick care and what our doctors specialize in for good reasons, because it equates to big money, not just big pharma. Let's go back to the article. Conservatives, on the other hand, have begun to embrace healthy alternatives to the lucrative solutions from pharmaceutical elites who capitalize on decades of blatantly bad diet advice from America's corrupt medical experts. And the Republican primary, tech entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy picked up the epidemic of chronic disease to slam Big Pharma as a Wall Street project determined to profit off treatments over cures. I mean, we're gonna be addressing all these things in future episodes. It's so much to embrace, but that's one thing that RFK Jr. wanted to make sure that Donald J. Trump was going to address, or maybe even bring RFK on board to address, and that's making food safe. You know, RFK has been a big proponent of healthy water, healthy air. He has sued these big corporations in these environmental lawsuits, and in many cases, he has won. And boy, I've been on this for years myself. Meanwhile, in June, it wasn't a Democrat who proposed legislation in Congress to ban high fructose corn syrup and other harmful food additives, but instead it was ex-swimsuit model and Republican Florida Representative Anna Paulina Luna. Kennedy always found a receptive audience in the conservative media ecosystem, or, put more broadly, to include carnivore favorites such as Joe Rogan, a dissident media sphere without an allegiance to any party, but prone to frequent censorship. In fact, just before he ran for president, Kennedy appeared on Tucker Carlson's original documentary on plummeting population-wide testosterone levels, which featured right-coded health influencers such as raw egg nationalists. And now it's apparently lost him family too, despite his assassinated uncle launching a presidential fitness initiative immediately upon his election in 1960, something I was talking about a few minutes ago, to put America back in shape in the 1960s when Kennedy's uncle was president and his father the U.S. Attorney General. American health spending was just 5% of gross domestic product. By 2021, it was more than 18% of the GDP. Obesity rates have also tripled. Obesity rates have also tripled since the early 1960s, ushered in the industrialization of the food supply and the low-fat diet craze. I'm telling you, ever since, and I was guilty of following that myself, Now that I have switched my diet, my lifestyle, as I will tell you, from no fat, low fat, no meat, vegan. Now, the reason why vegan diets work, the Mediterranean diets work, every diet works for a couple of reasons. When you start limiting calories in and you're expending more calories out, that deficit will help you lose weight. But the biggest reason that these diets are healthy is because they all get away from the standard American diet, which is ultra-processed foods. And it's so simple to get away from these. It's so simple. You really do not have to be that restrictive in your diet. You're not going to be limiting yourself the pleasure of eating. In fact, your pleasure in food will probably increase when you adopt a nutrient-dense food lifestyle. Not a diet that you go on and off again. I'm talking about a lifestyle that's sustainable for the rest of your life. A lot of these diets are not sustainable, even though they work because they're ultra-restrictive in calories. But to get your nutrients, everything your body needs to be metabolically healthy, you got to be eating. You got to be feeding the cells. But the biggest thing you need to be doing is moderating your glucose levels, and you want to be mastering insulin sensitivity. When we become insulin resistant because we're bombarding our cells every couple hours with high glucose meals, the cells shut the door. No longer can insulin, who holds the keys, open up those cells to let nutrients in. And those nutrients get peed or pooped out of the system or sent back to the liver to be transformed into fat to be used at a later time. And so we need to make our cells healthy again so that insulin is going to be, and we're going to be sensitive to insulin. So insulin can now open the doors again to our cells, let those nutrients in. And so it's real simple. Following the Primal Health Coaching Institute primal laws of success, the things we can eat are meat, fish, fowl, eggs, vegetables, fruits, nuts, and seeds. That leaves quite an array of choices, healthy choices. And really, all you need to get rid of is, and you don't have to get, depending on your sensitivity to them, you can fudge a little bit maybe on the grains or legumes, but initially, if you just get rid of grains, sugars, and chemically altered oils, these oils like Wesson oil, safflower oil, these kind of oils that are created at high heat, that they're just mechanically created, chemically created in a factory, are going to lead to your early death. And you don't want that. I know I'm conscious of that, maybe because I'm on the other side of halfway to life expectancy. So I'm motivated big time. But I'll tell you what, it seems now that I've switched to healthy fats, I'm eating eggs again. All right, the yolk is a healthy fat, has so many nutrients. I'm eating avocados, such a healthy, natural fat. Avocado oil, healthy, natural fat. Grass-fed components for cheese, eating cheeses again. And so, since I've been eating healthy fats, and I've been limiting my carbohydrates so that I'm not inducing a heavy insulin load and having these spikes and these crashes. And now that I've become fat adapted, so that my body is now keto and fat adapted to burn ketones and fat, now I've been using body fat for energy. Even the six-pack is coming back at age 67, everybody. So these things work. They're so simple, and you enjoy nutrient-dense foods. And when you go into a restaurant, you can actually pick and choose from the menu. And, you know, restaurants are pretty adept now at letting you, can I substitute this? Can I leave this off and put this in? How about, you know what? How about, I know it comes with a side of pasta. Can I switch that to the vegetables or the tomatoes or something, other, maybe another house salad? And so restaurants are pretty adept at being pretty flexible. So order what you want and you're going to be in charge of your health. And that's why RFK is motivated to join Donald J. Trump's team, because he has said, I'm going to join forces with you to make America healthy again. I know that's part of my mission. I hope it's part of yours. Let's live long. Longevity. We can actually live till we die instead of living down, and then dying. We can actually live till the end. Let's do it, everybody. I'm motivated. I'm inspired by all this. Politicization of health and fitness, meanwhile, drove would-be leftist voters into a dissident ecosystem receptive to Kennedy's messaging on all three issues as Democrats embrace the Wall Street mantra of health at every size and a new brand of deflated masculinity. So it should be no surprise that Kennedy, who had been running a testosterone-fueled campaign which featured push-up videos. I recently, push-ups is just one of those all-around exercises. Number one, you can do it anywhere, and it really engages the full upper body. Definitely, it gets your core, your chest at all levels. You can vary your hand positions to hit all angles of your chest and your front shoulders, and definitely your triceps. And you can actually raise your legs. You can go at a higher angle. So you can vary your body position and do your push-ups no matter where you're at. You can be in a hotel room. You can be in an airport. You can be in the airport and drop down and give me 25. You can do it. Push-ups, you can do it. It's one of those major exercises. So I've been averaging over 100 a day. Last week I had a day where I did 500. I think that was too many. But push-ups. And you see, look at RFK Jr. I mean, the guy's in his 70s. Don't you want our leaders, our political leaders, and our people that are representing us to represent a healthy human being, a strong, fit American representative, which RFK Jr. is? Believe me, there's a lot I don't agree with him on. He is still a Democrat, but he's decided, what do we agree on? And I can go forward, and Donald J. Trump is willing to embrace some of the flags that I want to carry. And that's what RFK Jr. is doing for the better good of everybody involved. And he's doing it for the right reason in the right way with the right motivation. Now, I'm just sporadically reading from this article, and I would motivate you. I would suggest, hey, go to this article in the Federalist. Health appears to be the primary policy arena Kennedy hopes to influence within a potential next Trump administration as chronic disease czar. Hey, that'd be a good title for him. He'll be the chronic disease czar. On censorship in Ukraine, former President Donald Trump and Kennedy are on the same page. But on health and hygiene, Kennedy probably wouldn't eat a single item on the table at Trump's last inflation press conference from Bedminster, New Jersey, full of processed cereals and seed oils. In fact, Kennedy slammed seed oils as primary culprits driving America's epidemic of chronic disease. And boy, is that true. And maybe RFK Jr. will have a positive impact on Donald J. Trump's health and his dietary lifestyle. Kennedy understands that while the cost of food is too high, the quality remains too low, and it's driving up healthcare costs for everyone. Trump would be wise to take the page from the Kennedy playbook after the endorsement capped off the Democrats' sugar high from the DNC in Chicago. Even more so, Melania Trump ought to adopt Kennedy's platform to pick up where Michelle Obama left off. Obama failed to meaningfully take on childhood obesity because her husband's administration was too afraid to make enemies of the food industry. Trump's, however, wouldn't be, having shown he is far less afraid to take on established interests like Big Pharma. But both administrations would at least agree childhood obesity is the silent crisis requiring bipartisan cooperation. Even if Republicans initially balked when faced with First Lady Obama's finger-waving, here's what Trump's own nominee for Vice President, President J.D. Vance, wrote on the issue in his 2016 memoir, Hillbilly Elegy. This is from J.D. Vance. Barack Obama strikes at the heart of our deepest insecurities. He is a good father while many of us aren't. He wears suits to his job while we wear overalls if we're lucky enough to have a job at all. His wife tells us that we shouldn't be feeding our children certain foods, and we hate her for it, not because we think she's wrong, but because we know she's right. If you don't think the government is corrupt when it comes to our food and our health and our sick care system, you got to pay attention. You got to look a little deeper into this so that you can control what you're putting in your mouth. You'll end up being killed by the government because these people are paid off. Here's an article from Forbes back in 2022. Why is biopharma paying 75% of the FDA's drug division budget? Why? Do you think that's going to have an effect on the FDA and what they approve for drugs that they want to give you, that they're pushing doctors to prescribe to you for chronic disease and illnesses that are probably mostly food-borne and induced? We need to look into it. And that's why RFK Jr. has joined forces with Donald J. Trump, because he wants to fight these people. He wants to sue them and get food back to being safe. It's an issue that surfaces every 5 years when Congress debates renewal of the Prescription Drug User-Fee Act, the first incarnation of the Prescription Drug User-Fee Act. Occurred in 1992 at a time when drugs were getting approved far more quickly in Europe than in the U.S. by as many as 3 to 4 years. Americans were outraged by this. Why should Europeans get access to important new medicines, especially when many originated in the U.S.? In response, Congress held hearings to understand the problem. The FDA testified that they were grossly understaffed and needed more money to hire additional experts to evaluate the benefits and risks of potential new medicines. So how did Congress come up with these needed funds? It decreed that drug companies must pay a user fee each time they filed a new drug application, an NDA, new drug application. These funds would then be used to support the FDA's drug division. User fees, which were $200,000 in 1992, have now risen to as high as $3.1 million. These people are paid off. This is an interesting situation. To market a drug, a company needs FDA approval, and now said company has to pay for the privilege of an FDA review, which can result in an outright rejection. But user fees had the desired impact. By hiring 600 new reviewers, the backlog of new drug applications awaiting approval in 1992 was addressed. As a result, the biggest year of new drug applications approvals to that point occurred in 1996 with 56 drug approvals. As a concession to agreeing to user fees, the pharmaceutical industry was promised that the FDA would reduce review times for new drug applications to 12 months for those that were considered standard applications, and to 6 months for priority applications that involved significant advances over existing treatments. This was a welcome change for the industry, but also for patients who were awaiting access to new medications. These people are paid off in the government. These people are paid off in money and in jobs. Check out this article, FDA's revolving door. Companies often hire agency staffers who managed their successful drug reviews. Conflict of interest. These people are corrupt. They take money and jobs. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA, says its rules, along with federal laws, stop employees from improperly cashing in on their government service. But how adequate are those revolving door controls? How? Science has found that much like outside advisors, regular employees at the agency headquartered in Silver Spring, Maryland, often reap later rewards, jobs or consulting work from the makers of the drugs they previously regulated. FDA staffers play a pivotal role in drug approvals, presenting evidence to the agency's advisory panels and influencing or making approval decisions. they are free to move to jobs in pharma, and many do. In a 2016 study in the BMJ, researchers examined the job histories of 55 FDA staff who had conducted drug reviews over a 9-year period in the see, now I'm going to have to try to say this. Hematologic, something to do with blood field. They found that 15 of the 26 employees who left the agency later worked or consulted for the biopharmaceutical industry. FDA's safeguards are supposed to keep the prospect of industry employment from affecting the employees' decisions while at the agency, and to discourage them from exploiting relationships with former colleagues after they depart. For example, former high-level employees can't appear before the agency on the precise issues they regulated, sometimes permanently, in other cases, for a year or two. Through web searches and online services such as LinkedIn, however, science has discovered that 11 of 16 FDA medical examiners who worked on 28 drug approvals and then left the agency for new jobs employed by or consult for the companies they recently regulated. This can create at least the appearance of conflicts of interest. Do you think? Can you imagine how influenced I'm going to be? Listen, if I approve this drug by this company and there's some kind of backdoor promise, when you're done with this government job, your job with us could be quite lucrative. Approved. These people are corrupt. They're taking money. The safeguards should be put in place. And who is going to be suffering because of these things? It's going to be us, the American public, who are constantly being pushed these drugs by the doctors. Jeffrey Siegel, who was an FDA staff member specializing in reviews for arthritis drugs, oversaw the 2010 approval of Genentech's arthritis drug, tocilizumab. Probably saying it wrong. Months later, he left the agency to join the company and its parent, Roche, as director of the division that includes Actemra and related offerings. Siegel represented Roche before his former FDA colleagues when the company sought approval to promote Actemra for new conditions. Last year, he told Stat that the timing of his decision to join Roche and Genentech was coincidental. Vinay Prasad, a hematologist-oncologist at Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, who co-wrote the 2016 study in the Boston Medical Journal? I'm not sure. Contends that weak federal restrictions plus an expectation of future employment inevitably bias how FDA staffers conduct drug reviews. Quote, when your number one major employer after you leave your job is sitting across the table from you, you're not going to be a hard ass when you regulate. That's just human nature. End quote. We've just touched a tip of the iceberg when it comes to the corruption dealing with the medical field. So deep when you get into it, but we have to get into it, and we need representatives, and we need people who are going to fight Big Pharma, who are going to fight for safe food in this country. And because when you go in the grocery store, 70% of the food is full of high fructose corn syrup. It's full of ultra processed foods. 70% of the food in the grocery store is full of ultra processed foods. It's unhealthy for us. They use marketing to ensnare the kids. Believe me, a kid, if we can get him, and a lot of kids are being, I forgot the percentage, that are diabetic by the time they're 30. That's big money to Big Pharma. That's big money to the medical industry. If we can keep them as a diabetic for the rest of their life, it won't kill them, but it can keep them on meds. As a matter of fact, we're going to get into, maybe in the next couple episodes, we're going to get into Ozempic that they now want to give to kids so they can take it for the rest of their life to control their weight problem. They want you, me, and now children on these weight control drugs for the rest of our lives. Well, you got to take this the rest of your life. No way, no, we're not going to do it. That's why we're going to have to support the administration, the Trump administration, RFK Jr., Tulsi Gabbard. You got Tulsi Gabbard, former Democrat. You got RFK, lifelong Democrat, independent, joining forces with the Trump campaign to do what's right for the American people, America first. And that's why we're going to support them, and we're going to vote for them courageously without fear of retaliation from anybody. So for all you haters, you cannot follow the show. That's okay. For everybody else, please subscribe to the channel. If you're listening or watching on YouTube, subscribe to the channel. More to come, everybody. Make sure you're notified when the next video comes out. And if you're listening on a podcast platform, follow us, subscribe to the show. It tells the computer that people are interacting with the show, and they'll show it to more people who may need it, because we're going to make America healthy and fit again. You and I can do it. We can have a positive impact on ourselves and other people. You know I love you. I'll see you in the next episode.